You know, partner, there's moments in a man's life when everything you thought you knew about yourself just crumbles, like watching a house burn down, knowing you lit the match yourself. I was standing by my woodpile that morning, axe in hand, when she walked through that mist like some kind of phantom. 20 years I'd been alone on that Wyoming ranch. 20 years of silence, cattle, and barbed wire. 20 years of keeping the world locked outside my gate. Then Clara Wade appeared. She moved through that dawn mist with her cotton dress, clinging to every curve, soaked from her long walk. Her brown hair braided tight, swaying against her back with each step. When she paused at my gate, chest rising beneath that near-transparent fabric, her eyes swept across my empty plains and locked onto mine. "Morning, mister," she called out, voice smooth as the whiskey I'm drinking now. "I'm Clara Wade. I've come to learn how to milk a cow." Simple words, right? But partner, the way she stood there, the shimmer on her skin, the promise in her stare. It felt like heat sliding beneath the door of a cabin I'd locked 20 years ago. Should have walked away. Should have told her to find another teacher. But that scent of hers, wildflowers, sweat, and something almost sinful, wrapped around me like smoke. Partner, if you think the story's worth hearing, hit subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. Because when that woman crossed my gate, she wasn't just asking for lessons. She was carrying a secret that would either save us both or burn us to ash. 2 weeks. That's what I told her. Sunrise lessons. You do what I say. Leave when I'm done. No personal talk, no exceptions. She nodded, those bright eyes holding gratitude, and something else. Determination mixed with shadows I couldn't read. Set my nerves on edge like the scent of a storm before it breaks. First morning, she arrived as the sky blushed pink. Work dress patched but clean, old gloves clutched in hands that trembled just slightly. I led her to the barn, every step making me too aware of her presence. The soft rustle of her skirt, the way her braids swayed as she matched my stride. Inside, warm air, thick with hay and cattle, but it was her nearness that made my skin prickle. Showed her how to approach Bessie, my gentlest Holstein. Kept my voice low. Slow steps. No sudden moves. Cows feel your fear. Clara mimicked me, movements cautious but earnest. When she crouched beside Bessie, that dress pulled tight across her shoulders and I caught myself staring, throat dry as dust. Had to turn away, cursing the heat stirring in my chest. Partner, you got to understand. 20 years I'd perfected the art of being alone. 20 years since a woman's voice had been my undoing. Wasn't planning to let it happen again. But Clara, she wasn't like the ghosts haunting my past. No prying, no flirting. Just worked hard, that patched dress growing damp with sweat as she carried buckets, shoveled in hay. Each day she learned faster than expected. By the third morning, she could position the milking stool without guidance, hands finding rhythm with the udder. Wasn't her progress that unsettled me, though? Was the way she listened, head tilted, lips parted, absorbing every word. The way she laughed, soft and unguarded, when Bessie flicked her tail in protest. That sound, so foreign in my barn, cracked something inside me, a wall I'd built to keep out the pain of betrayal. One morning, as she leaned over to clean an udder, a lock of hair slipped free, brushing her cheek. The curve of her neck, exposed and glistening, caught the sunlight filtering through the barn slats. My hands froze on the pitchfork, pulse hammering like a blacksmith's anvil. Forced myself to look away, but the image lingered, dangerous spark in the dry tinder of my solitude. Fifth day, she asked the question that cut too close. "Have you always worked this ranch alone, mister?" Voice curious, innocent, but it dragged up memories of laughter in that very barn, of hands that once worked beside mine, now long gone. "That's not your business," I snapped, sharper than intended. Clara flushed, eyes dropping. I'm sorry. You teach like you've done it before." The sincerity in her apology only deepened my unease. She wasn't trying to manipulate me, partner, and that made her more dangerous. She was real. And real was what broke you. By the seventh day, I caught myself watching her more than teaching. The way she spoke softly to the cows, voice soothing their restless tails. The way her fingers, steadier now, worked with grace that belied her inexperience. Hated how her presence filled the barn, made the silence I'd cherished feel hollow. When she stumbled carrying a heavy bucket, I caught her arm without thinking. My hand lingered a moment too long. Her skin was warm, breath-catching as our eyes met. For a heartbeat, that barn seemed to shrink, air thick with something unspoken. Dropped her arm like it burned, stepping back. "Watch your footing," I muttered, turning to the stalls. That night, alone in my cabin, couldn't shake the memory of her nearness. I'd built my life to avoid this. Connection, vulnerability, the pull of a woman who could unravel me. But Clara wasn't just learning to milk cows. She was learning knee for knee, slipping past defenses I'd thought impenetrable. And I hadn't sent her away. Why? Was it her stubborn resolve? Her refusal to beg or manipulate? Or was it the way her presence made me feel alive? A feeling I'd buried so deep I barely recognized it. 10th morning, she moved through those stalls with quiet confidence, hands coaxing milk with steadiness rivaling my own. No longer the uncertain woman who'd appeared at my gate. She was something else now. Capable, alive, and far too close for comfort. As Clara worked with Dolly, the most stubborn Holstein, she leaned low to adjust the bucket. That dress, damp from early heat, clung to her back, outlining the gentle curve of her spine. Single droplet of sweat traced a slow path from her temple, down the slope of her cheek, disappeared into her collar. My breath caught, fingers tightening around the pitchfork. Should have looked away, should have buried the ache rising in my chest. But my eyes lingered, drawn to movements both deliberate and effortless. She was a woman who worked with purpose, yet every motion carried grace that stirred something primal. Clara glanced up, catching my stare. Lips parted slightly, as if to speak, but no words came. Instead, flush crept up her neck, eyes holding mine with intensity that made the barn feel too small. "Am I doing this right, mister?" she asked, voice softer than usual, almost a whisper. Question was practical, but the way she said it, low, deliberate, sent a jolt through me. Stepped closer, unable to stop myself, boots scuffing against straw-covered floor. "You're doing fine," I said, voice rougher than intended. "Just keep your hands steady." She nodded but didn't break eye contact. Air between us thickened, charged with tension that hadn't existed a week ago. I moved to her side, ostensibly to check her technique, but my body betrayed me, brushing closer than necessary. My arm grazed hers, warmth of her skin sending shock through my veins. Clara froze, hands stilling on Dolly's udder. For a moment, neither moved. Barn silent, except for soft breathing of cows and faint creak of wooden beams overhead. Her scent, wildflowers, and earth filled my senses, pulling me toward a line I'd sworn never to cross. "Like this," I said, reaching for her hands, voice barely above a whisper. My fingers closed over hers, guiding them in the slow, rhythmic pull of milking. Her hands were warm, calloused, but soft, and the contact sent current through me, awakening desires I'd buried for 20 years. Clara's breath hitched, body shifting slightly, shoulder brushing my chest. She tilted her head, braid slipping to one side, exposing the curve of her neck. My gaze dropped to the pulse beating there, rapid and alive, mirroring my own. The urge to lean closer, to let my lips graze that skin, was overwhelming. My hand tightened on hers, and she didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers curled slightly, pressing into mine, silent acknowledgement of the heat building between us. World narrowed to just us, her breath, my heartbeat, the shared warmth of our hands. I leaned in, lips hovering near her ear, close enough to feel the heat radiating from her. "Clara," I murmured, her name slipping out like a confession. She turned her head, face inches from mine, eyes wide and searching. Space between us crackled, spark waiting to ignite. My free hand twitched, aching to touch the curve of her jaw, to pull her closer until there was no space left. Her lips parted, and I could almost taste the sweetness of her breath. But then, low, guttural bellow erupted from Dolly, that Holstein's sudden ruckus shattering the silence. Cow shifted, violently in her stall, tail lashing as she let out another panicked roar, hooves stomping ground. I jerked back, hand dropping Clara's like it burned. Clara stumbled, eyes wide with alarm as she steadied herself against the stall. Other cows joined in, their restless lowing filling the barn with chorus of unease. Something was wrong. Partner. Cows don't act like this without reason. My instincts flared, hand reaching for the rifle propped against the barn wall. "Stay here," I growled, voice sharp with urgency. Clara nodded, but gripped that pitchfork, posture tense and ready. Stepped outside, morning light harsh against my eyes. Corral looked calm, cattle grazing in the distance, but the air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Scanned the horizon, gripped tight on the rifle. Then I saw it, faint plume of dust, rising from the dirt path leading to my ranch. Too deliberate to be wind. Riders. At least 2, maybe 3, moving fast. Blood ran cold. Drifters had been plaguing the territory, men who burned ranches and took what they wanted. But had Clara brought this trouble with her? Was it tied to that secret I'd sensed from the start, the one flickering in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking? Glanced back at the barn, where Clara stood in the doorway, pitchfork clutched tight, face pale but defiant. "Who's coming, Clara?" I demanded, voice low and hard. Her lips parted, but no answer came, only flash of fear or guilt in her eyes. Dust cloud grew closer, and I knew whatever she was hiding had just caught up with us. Crouched behind the corral fence, rifle steady. Dust cloud resolved into 3 riders, horses pounding earth, hats pulled low. Clara still stood in the doorway, knuckles white around the pitchfork, eyes darting between me and approaching threat. Those cows' restless bellows had saved us from crossing a line neither was ready for. But now, different kind of danger loomed. "Get inside," I hissed. Clara shook her head, jaw set. "I'm not hiding." Her defiance sparked something in me. Admiration, frustration, flicker of fear I hadn't felt in years. Wanted to argue, to shove her into safety of the barn, but there was no time. Riders were closing in, silhouettes sharp against rising sun. My gut told me these weren't random drifters. Pace too deliberate, formation too tight. They were hunting. Lead rider reined up 50 yards out, horse snorting as he scanned the ranch. Lean, weathered face scarred, Colt revolver glinting at his hip. Other 2 flanked him, hands resting on their weapons. "Boone," the leader called, voice cutting through morning like a blade. "We know you got her." Hand over Clara Wade, and we leave peaceful. My blood froze. Her. They were here for Clara. Shot her a glance, searching for answers, but her face was mask of dread, breath shallow. She knew these men. "Who are they, Clara?" I demanded, keeping rifle trained on the leader. Her voice trembled, but she answered, "They're from my husband's past. Men he owed money to. I thought I'd lost them when I left Cheyenne. The admission hit me like gut punch. Her husband's debts. That was the secret she'd carried, the weight behind her desperate need to make her ranch work. These weren't just creditors, partner. They were predators, and Clara was their prey. "Last chance, Boone," the leader shouted, hand twitching toward his revolver. I didn't flinch. "You're on my land," I called back, voice steady despite storm in my chest. "Ride out, or you don't ride at all." Leader smirked, signaling to his men. In an instant, air exploded with gunfire. Dove behind that fence, wood splintering as bullets tore through. Clara dropped to barn floor, scrambling for cover as shot ricocheted off doorframe. I returned fire, rifle's crack echoing across plains. One rider clutched his shoulder, cursing, but other two pressed forward. My mind raced. Couldn't hold them off alone, not with Clara exposed. "Get to the house!" I yelled, firing another shot. Clara hesitated, then sprinted toward the cabin, dress catching on a nail as she ran. Fabric tore, revealing flash of her thigh, and despite the chaos, my heart lurched, reminder of the moment we'd almost lost ourselves in. Shook it off, bolted from fence, running low to intercept third rider as he dismounted. Tackled him, both of us crashing into dirt and tangle of fists and dust. He was strong, fist connecting with my jaw, but years of hard labor gave me the edge. Pinned him, slamming his head against ground until he went limp. But leader was closing in, horse bearing down. Rolled, grabbing fallen rider's pistol, and fired. Shot grazed leader's arm, enough to make him veer off, cursing. Clara's scream cut through gunfire. Whipped around to see wounded rider dragging her from cabin, arm locked around her waist. Her dress torn further, fabric gaping at shoulder, but her eyes burned with fury as she drove elbow into man's ribs. He grunted, loosening grip, and she broke free, stumbling toward me. "Run!" I shouted, firing at leader. Clara didn't run. Instead, grabbed shovel leaning against cabin and swung it, catching wounded rider in chest. He crumpled, gasping. Leader reined up, face twisted with rage. "This ain't over, Boone," he snarled, wheeling horse around. "We'll be back for her." He and remaining rider galloped off, leaving their fallen comrade in dust. Lowered rifle, chest heaving, blood trickling from split lip. Clara stood panting, shovel still in hands, hair loose and wild. For a moment, we just stared at each other, weight of what had happened and what hadn't, hanging between us. "You didn't tell me," I said, voice low, accusatory. Clara's eyes dropped, guilt etching her features. "I thought I could handle it. I didn't want to drag you into this." Her words stung, but not as much as realization that I was already in too deep. I'd fought for her, risked my life, and it wasn't just about protecting my land. It was about her. Fallen rider groaned in dirt, knelt beside him, checking for weapons. "He's alive," I said, "but they'll come back, and they won't come alone." Clara's face hardened, hand tightening on shovel. "Then I'll fight too." I'm not running anymore. Met her gaze, seeing fire that had drawn me to her from start. But as dust settled and sun climbed higher, I knew this fight was far from over. Those men wanted Clara, and whatever debt she carried was worth killing for. Question was, how much was I willing to sacrifice to keep her safe? Evening fell, partner. We stood at that gate, horizon glowing red like a wound. Clara's hand rested on weathered wood, her silhouette strong against fading light. I watched her, knowing this wasn't end of our fight, but beginning of something neither had dared to name. That gate, once barrier to my solitude, now stood open. A path to future, where trust might heal what time had broken. 20 years, I'd built walls to keep pain out. One morning, one woman, one moment of choice, and those walls came tumbling down. Sometimes protection means opening your heart. Sometimes fighting means letting someone in. Was I right to risk everything for Clara? Was she worth the blood we'd shed, the blood still to come? You know what, partner? Some questions don't have easy answers. Chung sai jiao de fan jin, as they say. If you've listened this far, maybe you understand that choice ain't always about right or wrong. Sometimes it's just about what you can live with when the sun goes down. Hit that subscribe button, and next time we'll share another whiskey, and I'll tell you what happened when those bastards came back. Because they did come back, partner. And when they did, Clara and I learned what we were really made of. Until then, ride safe, partner. And remember, sometimes the best thing a man can do is open his gate to someone worth fighting for.